Hi good people, Titus here for another Unreal Engine tutorial, and in this video, I'll show you how to create simple jump pads to move your character around the level. We'll be using a combination of blueprint code with the level sequences to achieve this effect. Let's not waste any more time and jump right into it. Alright, I'm going to be using the third person template. Make sure starter content is checked, give a name, choose a location, and then hit create. Alright, we got our default map. First thing we're going to do is create some folders. So I'll go ahead and dock this in the layout. Alright, so first folder we'll create. Blueprints, of course. And then the next folder we'll create. We'll do a Blender folder. I have some models I can import in. And then the last folder, we'll do a sequences folder. Alright, and then we're going to import our meshes. So I created a simple jump pad and a landing target. You can get stuff like this from the asset store, or you can just use a simple cylinder. There's not really much to it. Alright, so that's the jump pad. We'll do the target. Import all there. Alright, let's actually create these instances now. So we'll go to our blueprints folder, create a new blueprint class. It's going to be type actor. Call it BP Launchpad. And then the next one is going to be BP, we'll do destination. Alright, let's open up our Launchpad first. I'm going to press Control Spacebar to bring up my content browser. I go to my Blender folder. I can highlight my static meshes, and then I can hit the Add button and then add multiple assets. That'll build out the mesh and assign it correctly from the transforms coming from Blender. Pretty simple. The next one we'll do is the destination pad, so same thing. There's only one static mesh on that one, so I'll just hit add and then do static mesh. And you may not see it, that's because it's pretty big, so we gotta zoom out a bit. So nothing to that one either. Alright, we'll go to our map now, and let's drag out our launch pad. And then let's create a destination. So what I can do is press escape to deselect everything. Then I can do Shift 5. That'll bring me into the modeling tools. Or you can actually just select here and click modeling. And then you'll notice you have a cube grid option. It only works if you have nothing selected. So we'll click that, and I'll just create a simple area over here. I'll press Control and drag up. I'll accept. Then we can drag this down a bit and maybe add a brick layout to it so it looks a little different. Alright, then we'll drag out our destination pad right here. And then that completes the level setup portion of it. Alright, so let's go ahead and actually write some code. We'll go back into our Launchpad. We'll go to the event graph. We'll get rid of begin play, and we'll get rid of tick. We're going to be using a begin overlap. In order to make that work, we need to add some type of collider. So we can do a search for collision or collider, and we got a box, capsule, and a sphere. I'm just going to do a simple box just to make it easy. I can then drag that up, press R, I'm going to scale it down, and then I'll bring it down, yeah, maybe right there. Go to top view, and then I can press R again and scale it out a bit in the X and Y. So I have something to intersect the player character. So to execute some code, basically. Alright. Once we have that set, The next thing we do is we need to make a variable, so we have a way to set the destination pad up. The way we can do that is come to variables and hit the plus sign, and we'll just call it maybe target. And then I'm going to change it from a boolean to a actor object reference. So we can go to our object types, find actor, and choose object reference. I'm then going to hit the little eyeball to make it instance editable so we can see it in the editor. Compile and save. And then it's just as simple as dragging off the begin overlap. We'll do a cast to BP third person character, or replace this with whatever pawn you're using. If you're using the first person template, this would be the first person character, or whatever custom you're doing. I'll plug the other actor into the object here. And then I need to drag out my target. I'll do a get. Then we can right click on it, convert it to a validated get. Then you can drag into here. And then we need two pieces of information. We need the actor's location for where the character is, and then we need the actor's location of where the character needs to go. It's easy enough to get. From the third person cast, we can drag off here, do get actor location, and then from our target destination that we're going to set up in a second, we can drag off here and do get actor location. You can also do get actor transform, and then you can right click and split the structure pin, and then you have access to that location pin as well. Either method will work. This just gives you some other information like rotation or scale, which could be useful depending on what you're doing. To actually launch the player, we could mess around and try to figure out what velocities, impact forces. We could try to estimate it out and get a good look. But Unreal Engine actually has 3 functions built in that'll do a lot of the math for you. We can just do a suggest projectile velocity, and they have a moving target, custom arc, or just the regular one. For this one, I'm just going to use the custom arc. And then off the is valid pin, I will hook that up. The start position is going to be the player's position, so I'll plug this in here. The end position is going to be the target destination pad, so we'll plug this in here. Now this just does the math for us. It doesn't actually do anything outside of moving the character. To actually move the character, there's a built-in launch function, so we can, as the character, drag off and just search launch, and there's the function right there for launch character. It requires a launch velocity, which is a vector, which we have from our previous function node here. So we just plug this in like that, and then we're looking pretty good. So we'll add some reroute nodes, bring it down. Now from here, the overrides are usually, if you don't want to add any vectors, like if say the character was running at the pad, it would add their moving vector to the actual launch vector. So you might overshoot. Maybe that's what you want though. Or if the character was falling onto the pad, that would cancel out some of that, because you'd have a downward vector and an up vector, so there would be some loss there. So you may or may not want that. I'm going to override it for now, but that is optional. And then from this, we're pretty much done with the code on this part of it. You could probably pause the video here and give it a look over and determine if our code is good enough to actually launch us. And then what we can do here is see if you're right. If you guess no, congratulations, you are correct. The code is good, but we didn't actually set the destination yet. So if we go into our actual object, near the top, we have that target field, that target variable that we made public. We actually have to set this to something in the scene. If you don't have a target mesh, that's fine. You can just simply add a target point, and it's just an empty. And then you can place this wherever in your world, and then just come here and search target, and it'll point it at this target point and throw the character there. But I actually have one, so I'm just simply going to change this to our BP destination. And that will cover almost everything we need. There's still going to be a problem with this. So if we hit play and we jump on our pad, it tries to throw us over, but we don't quite make it. So if you've been working in Unreal for a while, you probably know why. The default character movement component for the third-person template, they messed with a lot of the gravity and the friction. So if we open up the player character, there's this character movement script. You can click on that, and you can modify a bunch of things, like movement settings, jumping settings, all sorts of things. The biggest problems are mainly one in the jump function. There's braking deceleration while falling. We can actually set that to 0, and that'll almost get you where you need to be. So now when we hit the pad, it's going to launch us further, but not quite there. The other thing that's an issue is the gravity scale. Typically when you're doing these types of things, the physics engine expects a 1-to-1 gravity scale for proper simulation. For some reason they have it at 175 or 1.75, which is going to make the character heavier than they are, so the physics engine's not going to be able to compensate for that. So if I compile and save, my jump's going to be a little bit higher. But if I hit the pad right, which I missed, I should actually make it over there now. Now, the other thing that you may want is, because the gravity is 1-to-1, maybe don't leave the jump velocity at 700. Probably bump it down so you can get a more, I guess, what you're used to for this character. It's more of a shorter jump, so it's a little bit easier to actually hit. But all right, you can see that works pretty good, but let's take it a step further and add a little bit of realism to it. For the next part here, I am going to maybe get the spring to actually do a spring action. So what we can do for that is I'm going to come into selection mode. I'm going to go up here to the level sequence, and I'm going to add a level sequence. I'm going to call it, well, I'm going to go into sequences first, and I'll call it spring. I'm going to dock it in my Docker here. The level sequencer is pretty simple. You can just add a track. We can select an actor to sequence. I have a Launchpad already in the level, so I can just select that. We can then add a component to actually animate. I'm going to be messing with the transform. And then I'm going to do this kind of like quick and dirty. There's a couple different ways you can do this. Like, it's better if you did it in your modeling software. Like if you just created an animation on like an armature, and then you just import that animation. You can then create an animation blueprint if you needed to, and just trigger the animation dynamically. That scales very well. But if you don't feel like doing that, you can do it like this. It just doesn't scale very well because you have to do it on each object. But for this example, I think it'll work fine. So what we can do is we can come into scale, and I'm going to do a 1 second animation. If you noticed at the top, it has a 30 frames per second. So after 30 frames, it's 1 second. I will add a keyframe for my Z scale. I will come to the end, add another keyframe for my Z scale. I'm going to come to frame 10, and I'm going to bump my scale to maybe 0.4 so it looks compressed. It looks like it keyed it in for me. I have auto keying on? That's weird, I don't. And then I'm going to go 3 frames in maybe. A spring, like, it compresses kind of slowly, but then it really pops up fast. So you generally want that behavior to happen very quickly and with very few frames. So I'm going to just double the scale and really make it pop. And it looks like it keys it in for me. And then I'm going to come to maybe frame 17-ish. And then I'm going to bring it not quite at 1 where it was. I'm actually going to come back just a little bit further, just to bring it down. So it looks like it oscillates a bit. And then at frame maybe 23 or 25, somewhere around there, I'm not quite going to go back to 1. I want to go past it a little bit. So maybe a 1.1. And then my end frame will return to 1. So if we look here and push play, you have this little spring tension. And it happens so fast, it's not a perfect animation, but for what we're doing here, the player won't notice it. Plus it's going to launch them too. So, but yeah, so that's it for the sequence. Now we actually need to use it. So what we can do is come back to our Launchpad, and we're going to need another variable. So we can come into our variables, and we'll add spring anim, or whatever you want to call it, doesn't really matter. And then instead of an actor, we can do a search for a level sequence. Oops. And then there's a level sequence option here, and we can do an object reference. So it changes it to level sequence. We can then compile, because you'll notice on the right side we don't have access to anything. So we'll hit compile, and now we have access to the values. So we can change that to a spring, which is what we created earlier. Compile and save. And now what we can do, we need a little bit of room, and we'll drag the begin overlap over. And I'm going to drag out my spring animation. I'll do a get to it, drag off, create level sequence player is what we need. And then off of here, we can do a search for play. This will only work if you drag off the sequence player, by the way. And then choose the one that has the sequence player in parentheses. When you do that, it'll add this weird little node here. And this node, you're just going to take the out actor, plug it into the target, and then it'll pass it through so it knows which animation to play. Because on your sequencer, you can actually animate multiple things, right? So just because you animate like 30 different items doesn't mean they all play at once. You can dynamically pick which ones they save. Just save them as different sequences basically, and then target them directly. And then just like that, this should work. So if I press Q, should line it up. Drag it down here. I'll drag this pin over there. This pin here. And I'll drag this up here maybe. Actually, I'll do it like this. No, I can't. Actually, what I should have done is just add a couple of reroute nodes and bring this down. That would have been smarter. All right, this will work though. Move that back. Press Q, line that up. All right, looks good. Now, there's still going to be an issue with this. I don't think we're going to see it, but we can try. There's usually a little bit of timing with these things. So if I go in, you can't really see the spring. It happens too quickly. So what we can do is off of the validation, we can maybe just drag off into a delay. And then usually a small delay, just enough time before the player actually gets launched so you can actually see the animation. So we'll maybe try 0.2 and see. Is enough. If not, just adjust accordingly. That's also going to depend on your animation, but looks like that worked pretty good. Maybe it needs to be a little bit longer, but I'm actually okay with that. All right, just show you how cool this this function is for the suggested velocity, which you can use for like grenades and things. Imagine if we went back into modeling, so Shift 5, press Escape. I'm gonna click Cube Grid. Say I built something out here. Could crazy tower thingy. And then I built a smaller inset. And then I'll accept that. And then I'll go Shift 1 to go back into selection mode, go back to my content browser, select my blueprints, and then I will drag this down a bit. Let's add some type of material. Let's see, metal, is there any metals? Chrome, steel, what's that look like? Burnished steel, that looks pretty neat. Why not? All right, let's say we went up here and we added our destination pad over here. Bump it up a bit. Now this destination pad is a different name. It's destination pad number 2. So if I click on my little spring pad or launch pad over here, I am pointing to destination pad number 1, but if I just select number 2, compile and save. Now if I jump over to this thing, it should launch me with pretty good accuracy right on there. Obviously I don't have enough friction on the ground, I slide, but I mean that's pretty much dead on there, so. Alright people, we'll cut it here to keep it short. I hope you found some informative value in this topic that you can take into your own projects, but as always, thanks for watching, consider subscribing, and see you on the next one.